All right, we're streaming. Kim, if you want to open, go ahead.
All right, thanks, Mark. All right, hi everybody. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Mark, if you'd like to go ahead and call roll for us.
Stephanie, go ahead, please.
Or Stephanie.
Okay.
Sorry, Stephanie.
No, we're playing musical host and musical staff person on you. Okay, let's see. Ms. Burton,
Present.
Mr. Brubaker,
Present.
Mr. Chapelier,
Here.
Mr. Gupta,
Here.
Mr. Herskowitz,
Here.
Mr. Lachey, okay, Mr. Paul,
Here.
thank you, Mr. Sellers,
I'm here.
and Mr. Smithers.
Present.
Perfect. Looks like we are good to go with a quorum.
Great, thank you. All right, moving on to the record of proceedings of our minutes from last month. And do we have any comment? Do we have any motion to approve the minutes?
Smithers, so moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second the
Second. I think Mike edged you out there, Jay.
Way to go, Mike.
Do we have any comments on the minutes? Nope. Okay. We'll go ahead and put that to a vote then, Stephanie.
Sure. Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Mr. Brubaker,
Yes.
Mr. Chapelier,
Yes.
Mr. Gupta,
Yes.
Mr. Herskowitz,
Yes.
Mr. Paul,
Yes.
Mr. Sellers,
Yes.
and Mr. Smithers.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great. Thank you. All right. Any old business that's not on the agenda that we need to discuss? Nope.
Nope.
All right. Moving on to new business then. We have one application here, 7488 Lee Road, which is the 20-041. Would staff like to make a formal presentation on this for us?
Yes, give me just 1 second to share my screen here. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. All right, so the application we'll be reviewing is Z20-041, which is for 7488 Lee Road. We did review this application last month conceptually. So what we're going to do is just do a quick refresher on what we looked at, look at the new materials the applicant provided, and then I'll go over the staff recommendation. So as a refresher, this is one parcel, a little over 2.7 acres located on Lee Road. You'll see it in the upper left corner of the accord boundaries here, denoted by the little red star. It was annexed into the city of Columbus in 2018, but was not rezoned. So it's currently still zoned rural. The applicant is now requesting a rezoning to suburban residential, which will allow them to do the lot split. And just for the record, the accord plan document does recommend rural residential for this property, which is 1 dwelling unit per acre density. So this is the overview of the site. This is the entire 2.7 acres. You can see the existing house there in the middle. This was presented last time by the applicant. And this is the site plan we received when we looked at this conceptually. You can see again the original house there in the center, and the black dashed line is where they're proposing to do the lot split. So based on the conceptual review in July, there were some outstanding questions and comments that we went back to the applicant for. We requested a revised site plan that would address any outdoor lighting, the location of the driveway, the house setback, the house location, and any landscaping. We also requested if they had any elevations available of what the future home may look like, understanding that one had not been officially decided upon. We also were curious about the size of the new lot once the split were to occur, and then any materials that would be used on the new home. The applicant was able to address almost all of those with the exception of the outdoor lighting, as that has not been decided upon at this point. So for the driveway, they are proposing about 10 feet wide and 364-ish feet long. So therefore the house would be set back about 364 feet. The house location and the landscaping are on the revised site plan they provided. So we'll look at that on the next slide. The applicant did provide one potential house elevation. So we'll look at that as well. The new lot size would be just over an acre at 1.04 acres, and the proposed materials would likely be either vinyl or hardy siding, and then at least 30% stone on the front elevation. So here is the revised site plan we received. You'll see the existing house and the dotted line for the proposed lot split. You'll see that the driveway has been added as well as the proposed house, and additionally a tree line is being proposed along the property line, dividing the two lots. This is the elevation that the applicant provided. And we can come back to these as if any questions come up. So in conclusion, the staff feels that the proposal addresses the outstanding questions and comments from the conceptual review and is generally consistent with the standards of the Accord. Therefore, staff recommends approval with the condition that the applicant provide additional information on outdoor lighting to staff as it becomes available. That is all we have. I can go back to anything or I have Google Maps or anything else you'd like to see I can pull up.
Thanks, Stephanie. Appreciate it. Is there anyone from the applicant that would like to present or discuss their application?
Denise is here.
Hi. The only question I have is someone most likely will build a first floor master or a two-story on this lot. It will be a Diani home.
Sure.
That floor plan is one of our most popular ones, but it could be a different floor plan. And as far as lighting goes, is it just lighting on the house or just like a light post out by the drive? What is it that you guys really want to see?
Not sure if there's a member of staff that wants to respond to that now.
Sure. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, sorry. I was just gonna say, hang on. Yeah, there we go. Just the lighting information insofar as what's provided on the checklist. So things like is wiring underground. There's landscape features around them that they're of like a similar like uniform style. Just things that are on the checklist, and we can send that to you. And what was on the staff report as well. So just a couple basic features about what the lighting would look like per the Accord plan.
All right, thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Denise, do you have anything else that you'd like to share or talk about with this application?
The only thing I want to mention is last time you guys asked about the neighbors, right? If you're looking at the house to the left, and that house has been being remodeled and they don't even ever see the owners or anything there. I just wanted to let you guys know as far as that goes. But there will be trees blocking both sides.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. All right, thank you, Denise. And I believe Stephanie said there aren't any comments from the public to go through. Okay, great. We can move on to panel member comments then. Who from the panel has questions or comments?
This is Ralph Smithers. I just have a quick process question. Does our meeting generate any correspondence to the neighbors so that they would know that this is coming?
Mark, do you know the answer to that?
Yeah. So this meeting itself would not, but because this is a rezoning application, there's some requirements with Department of Building and Zoning Services around notifying adjacent property owners, notifying neighbors. So it wouldn't be triggered by this meeting, but that, because there's a zoning change at this location, that would have been part of the process. Mm-hmm.
Ralph, did you have any other questions or comments?
I just wanted to know that from a process standpoint. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right, who else from the panel would like to offer any comments or questions? Go ahead, Mike.
One question I have is the house, and I'd seen the picture on the thing, giving me an idea of the floor plan and all that kind of stuff. But now you're saying it might be an entirely different house or whatnot. My question is the value of the house going to be equal to or greater than the houses in the area?
Yes, for sure. That house right there is about a $350,000 house. The land itself is going to sell probably around between 120 and 140. So it'll be, plus we have land improvements, it'll be 550 or above.
And another quick question that I had was, they were talking about whether it be hardy plank, well, they said called it hardy, I assume hardy plank, or vinyl. I guess my question is to why are you specifying one or the other as opposed to just going with whatever goes with that particular house that you put in there?
Because it depends on the area. It depends on the client's budget. If there isn't deed restrictions requiring all natural exterior, most people are going to pick siding to save in cost. It's probably about a $30,000, $20,000 to $30,000 savings. So it just depends on what the client wants to do, whoever's going to build there.
Okay, that was kind of what I was wondering from, so you're just saying that vinyl would be a lesser cost for the person doing a $350,000 house.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, other panel members?
Chair Burton, I did just have a quick comment. I reviewed our minutes and was refreshing my memory whether the panel had questions about lighting, and I don't see that we did so much. I understand that staff did note in their checklist none of the items in section 3.3 lighting have been completed. So I think all we're asking the applicant to do in this case is just be responsive to those very specific points, which on a residential property probably is not difficult. I'm assuming those are generally of more concern when we're talking about commercial properties than residential. But just the observation, I don't think the panel had questions. I think we just want to make sure that all the boxes were checked, so to speak. So thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Anybody else?
I have a question. This is Todd Brubaker. Mark, just to follow up on what you and Ralph talked about earlier as far as the process is concerned, I just want to, just so I have further clarification. So once we approve or whatever, after at least what we're looking at, there will be a notice, or I know in the application that all the neighbors were listed on there. Is there signage? I know in New Albany and stuff, they put up signage if there's a zoning change and so forth. Will there be notifications to the surrounding neighbors and or signage or something that there is a zoning change in process, and that happens after it leaves our table, basically? Is that correct?
So I don't know that signage is part of that. City of Columbus, I know, doesn't always do signage for rezoning applications. I know they've started doing it in a couple areas, but I don't think they've done the Rocky Fork area. The rezoning process has already started, so that notice to neighbors that was in the application, live is already part of that. Unfortunately, like some of the more particular points of that, because that process is administered by the Department of Building and Zoning Services, they could speak more to how they're notified better than I could. Lastly, this is not the end of the process. So after the vote that is taken here today, this application would still need to be heard before the Development Commission for the city, and then that would ultimately be voted on by Columbus City Council. So this is not like the end. This is just one step in the full rezoning process.
Also, Mark, could you confirm the process in terms of notification is only to property owners within 125 feet of the parcel boundaries? In this case, that would actually be a very small number given the rural nature of this site. Is that correct?
I couldn't confirm what the radius is foot-wise. Yeah, we would have to check with building and zoning for what that would be.
Yeah, it looks like on page 17 of our PDF, they've got the surrounding property owners already identified. So I assume that probably covers that radius. Additional questions, comments? I'll just jump in with mine. It sounds like the lighting is just more of a provide an information thing, so it doesn't sound like that's an issue. I think my only concern was the driveway spacing, which I mentioned last time, so I just want to call that out for the city staff over in traffic engineering to make sure that the driveway spacing is adhering to the minimum requirements there, so we're not creating an unsafe condition with too many driveways, especially since there's an intersection right there. But otherwise, it looks like the house does fit and meets the other requirements. So I don't have any other comments than that. All right. So any other comments, or is it time to put this to a vote? Okay. Do we have a motion to approve this application?
I will make that motion, Commissioner Paul, or panel member Paul.
Yeah, Ralph Smithers, second.
Thank you, Dave and Ralph. Do we have any further comments before we go to a vote? Okay. All right, Stephanie, please go ahead and call the roll for us.
Ms. Burton?
Yes.
Mr. Brubaker?
Yes.
Mr. Chapelier?
Yes.
Mr. Herskowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Gupta? Mr. Gupta, I think you were muted.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Mr. Paul?
Yes.
Mr. Sellers?
Yes.
And Mr. Smithers?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. And thank you, Denise, for being here tonight. I think we're good with this application, so we can move on to other business unless there's something else not on the agenda. Okay. So it looks like we've got a New Albany strategic plan update for tonight.
Yes, thank you very much. Great to be back with you guys. Long time no see, albeit I guess virtually now, and this is the new normal. So let me see if I can share my screen here. Oh, there we go. Thank you. And go through the slide deck I have here for you guys. So let me know. Can you see my? Oh, here we go. Share. Okay, here we go. All right. Well, so tonight I'm happy to be here. I just wanted to give you guys an update and an introduction to the city's update, the latest strategic plan process that we've started called Engage New Albany. So tonight I just want to provide, again, an informal presentation, give you guys some background on what we've done and where we are so far. So we started this process last spring. It's crazy to think it's been just a little bit over a year in the making. And we've completed the public engagement process. And so we're beginning to take the plan's draft components to all of our board and commissions informally to gather additional, I guess, feedback and analysis as we finalize the recommendations. So the plan this year, we've kind of gone broader than we normally have. I think we really are ending up with a more sophisticated plan than before too, which is great because it's looking at a wider array of planning components. So in addition to the traditional land use, mobility, parks and rec, we're also taking a much closer look into sustainability now. We're also, for the first time, looking at what we're calling community well-being. And we've also have taken a deeper dive into certain land use focus areas. So areas where we see changes and we feel like there is some additional need to take a more in-depth look for some additional standards for future infill development into this. So the Rocky Fork Blacklick Accords purview is for rezoning. So any rezoning that happens within the Accords area, whether it be in Columbus or New Albany, goes before this board, and this board is guided by the Accords documents for the land use and street recommendations. So the city of New Albany has a tradition of bringing our land use and transportation components to the Accord to give you an update on the latest things we're thinking and to hopefully get your endorsement as well for our new plan. So it's been interesting to look at the land use. The Accord area is largely built out in New Albany, and it has been success. I mean, greatly to attributable to this panel, making sure developers keep adherence to the plan's, standards and principle over the years. And so tonight I'm mostly going to focus on the background of what we've done so far as the planning process goes, and to give you some introduction into the land use and transportation components. So New Albany, we update our plan about every 5 years, just due to the I guess the speed of growth and development that's occurred in our community, really starting in the mid 1990s. And so very similar. I mean, really the same thing as the Accord. The strategic plan, just like the Accord master plan, guides future land use, infrastructure, and helps shape development patterns within the Accord area to make sure there's a cohesiveness between the city of Columbus and New Albany. And so you can see that really since the adoption of the Accord, we've done 4 plans, and I guess we're currently working on our 5th right now. And so we like sharing this slide. This is one of my favorite slides. It's just showing the history of planning and implementation in New Albany. And I think it's especially meaningful for this group. If you look back, it all starts with the Accord back in 1996. And the Accord was the first document to call for the Metro Park, the Rocky Fork Metro Park as we know it today. And that did come, to be. It does take some time. You don't know how long these things will take, but as you can see, that is one of the implementation steps, that things that came to happen, due to the Accord. So just a great legacy, to share here, and just to show that, these plans are meaningful and that's certainly it's warranted for these updates as well. So over the past year, we've done a lot of stuff. In fact, this has been the largest public engagement we've ever done for any type of planning endeavor, including strategic plan. So we've had 4 steering committee meetings. The steering committee consists of over 40 people. And I'd like to thank Mr. Brubaker and Mr. Sellers for serving on our steering committee. It's been a great group. I think we've got a lot of great feedback, and the plans come a long way because of them. But we've also done 3 community workshops with the community at large. We've engaged local stakeholders. We've done 5 focus group roundtable meetings. And we actually did something new this year that we called mobile meetings. We actually went into people's homes and had more intimate talks with residents and different stakeholders, and really got a chance to hear some feedback on a one-on-one basis as well, which was a lot of fun. And so, after all of this public meetings and review, what we heard and the information we gathered, consisted of over 600 online surveys. Again, we had, if you look at the bottom left there, we had over 1,200 people provide us information to help guide this plan's goals, objectives, and recommendations. So it's been a lot of work, but it's been a lot of fun and very rewarding. And I think, the plan that we have, is greatly shaped by the community. And so, what did we hear? So from all of this public input. So what we heard is, and again, we've asked this question many times, pretty much at all these meetings. We asked these 3 main questions: what are our strengths, weaknesses, and what are our priorities in New Albany? And so, the strengths, of course, we heard about the quality of our schools, and a sense of community and small town feel, legacy of master planning as well, right? I think, again, definitely attributable to, this accord that was started back in 1996, and has really created that sense of community and that small town feel. Luckily people feel safe, and they enjoy the aesthetics and maintenance. A lot of that is architecture, streetscape as well, that we've heard from them. And so what are our weaknesses that we heard? Maybe not too big of a surprise. We had a lot of road closures and construction over the past year while we were doing this plan. So we heard a lot about traffic and congestion. So we've taken a deep dive into that, and I'll share a little bit of our findings with you to give an introduction tonight. And another interesting and new thing that we heard from the community, and again, I think diversity is something we're hearing a lot about today, but this is something that we were collecting and hearing from our residents last summer in 2019, is lack of diversity being a weakness for the city of New Albany. And so we have the one chapter, community well-being, which focuses on that as well. And we hear this too about restaurants and retail wanting more of that, whether it be in the village center or in other areas of the community as well. And we hear about taxes and parking in the village center as well. And actually, we've started another plan this year of doing a parking study for our village center to help address those concerns. And so what are the priorities, from the community? So, it's enhancing diversity and a welcoming sense of community, more entertainment options. Again, I think that goes back to restaurants and retail. What we heard is that, people want, more free options and things for all ages as well, is something that's important to the community. And I think that also goes hand in hand with more diverse community programming as well. So something for everybody here in New Albany. Another thing we heard, which really came out of the neighborhood meetings, which I thought was really interesting, is the need for more parks and open space, and a need for additional maintenance as well. And so we've actually this year started another planning process. It's called the Parks Framework Plan. And so we're taking a look at our neighborhood park system. Certainly we've heard as part of this planning process and as part of the parks framework plan, just a need for updating of our parks equipment, concern for lack of maintenance, and something again needing for all ages, right? We have a lot of tot lots. This is what we call playground equipment here in New Albany. That's for a very select age group. Providing additional equipment for all ages in New Albany. So I'll launch in here to the growth analysis. So this is, the analysis we did for the land use component for our Engage New Albany plan. And so this is just an interesting slide we always like to start out with, just to share, because it's really interesting if you look at, this is to show the growth over time and the founding. New Albany was founded in 1837. It's such a small area. You almost can't even see it on the screen here. But certainly you can see that at the turn of the century, the lighter the color, the more it's grown. So again, it's just to highlight that, especially recently, we've seen a lot of growth in New Albany. We've been very lucky to see this continued growth here. And so, looking back at the census data, the percentages here, reflect that growth that you saw on the map before. So as of 2018, our population is just shy of 11,000 people. And, we've seen large amounts of growth being continuous even through the Great Recession. We've been definitely very lucky to continue to see this residential growth here that's occurring along with our business park as well. And so how do we track this growth? We track the number of new housing units built. And so the line that's running parallel here shows the average. And so we're averaging just shy of 100 new housing units being built in New Albany every year. And you can see there's, some ebb and flow over time to this. But certainly, over 100 or just around 100 units per year is pretty good for a community our size. And so this is showing the total number. So we're adding about 100 every year. You can see that we're just shy of about 3,500 total housing units in New Albany. And, since our last master plan, we've seen, our first true apartments here in the village center. And so we've seen the rise of that, something new that's been planned for a long time. But we've been lucky to see that development occur in our village center. So when looking at future land uses, we always start to see, what are the current land uses. The study area is what's bounded by our water sewer agreement. So the orange outline shows this is how big New Albany could be, I guess our growth extent based on our water sewer agreement. And so in gray here shows the areas that we could expand to, that we could serve with water and sewer, so areas that could be annexed into the city of New Albany in the future. And then anything that's in color here, I guess besides the Metro Park boundary that's just outside there, is showing the current land uses. So you can see the business park wrapping along 161 along the north side, certainly a large component of that in Licking County now. And then, residential, the Country Club south of 161, the New Albany Links, Upper Clarington, Wentworth, a lot of subdivisions also on the north side as well. And so looking at all this, you can see that, residential, it's about 3,300 acres. We actually have 4,400 acres of commercial land use. So we've through the master planning process and through boards and commissions such as this one, been able to keep that balance of, have an appropriate amount of commercial in order to provide the amenities and the services to our residents here in New Albany. So this map here highlights the areas of really what's left for future growth. So anything that's in green is showing undeveloped parcels that are currently within New Albany. And yellow is also undeveloped parcels, but are yet to be annexed. So they're still in the township. So you can see that, you know, there's still a fair amount of area that could be redeveloped in the future. And again, it's not shown here, but the Accords area is north of 161 and east of Kitzmiller. So actually within the Accord area that's within Franklin County, there's actually not too much space left, as I mentioned. So certainly it's been a lot of development again since the 1990s. And so, you know, these areas, you'll see these outlined in pink here. These are the areas that we're calling the focus areas that, again, we're taking this additional dive into to provide some additional standards and recommendations to help guide growth, you know, for various reasons and to ensure we get the type of development within those areas. So in addition to those strengths, weaknesses, and priorities that we heard from the community, you know, we also asked them some additional questions about, you know, what they would like to see. And so, you know, it was on the previous list, but, you know, by and large, when asking the community what they would like to see more of in New Albany, we heard about dining and retail and, you know, whether it be in the village center or in other areas. If you look at the bottom right here, we asked the community, you know, should we add retail areas within the city but outside the village center? So historically, New Albany's, you know, had a very concerted effort to limit the amount of retail and restaurants in New Albany to just the village center to help create that historic urban form and attract people to the village center. And you can see here, this is, you know, something new that we haven't asked before, but almost, you know, 70% of the people said they would like to see some retail or restaurants outside of the village center. And again, that would be a neighborhood scale. So not shopping centers or strip centers, but, you know, something to serve on a very small scale for neighborhoods. So a very interesting outcome that we heard this time from the community. And then, you know, what else do people want to see more of? You know, parks, recreation, and open space, more single family, and then office as well as an important component, you know, in order to provide additional jobs and amenities through the tax base for New Albany. So we've taken all these things, we've analyzed it. We've been working with our planning consultant, MCASK. They're the lead consultant for this plan. They've worked with the city since the 1990s and have done all our previous plans. And so when taking a look at the recommendations from our steering committee, from residents, we've created these land use categories. And so it's a little different than what we have today, but much of the same. So we have employment centers, which is, you know, our commercial base, like our offices. We have neighborhood retail. Again, this would be the restaurants and retail. We've always had specific recommendations just for the village center to help ensure that we get that historic urban form that's very walkable within there. And then residential, I mean, you guys have seen too, you know, when we did our last strategic plan in 2014 and brought it to you guys, age restricted housing, I don't even know if it was really a thing, definitely not on our radar. You guys have seen a couple rezonings with age restricted communities in New Albany. So that's certainly something that, you know, we're thinking about and we'll put into this plan. And again, we're hearing from the community about the need for additional park open space. And last but not least, a new category when we started to think about what we've heard from the community about the desire for additional restaurants, retail, is mixed use. And so this would be for something outside of the village center that could, you know, not compete with the village center, but you know, provide neighborhood scale, either offices or retail in mixed in with, you know, the residential component. And so this, so those are the land use categories. So this is our future land use map. So this is in, you know, still in draft form. We took this to our steering committee. We've gotten their feedback. We've begun to take this to our city planning commission. We've shared this with our city council. So we're getting some additional feedback from them. But what we added to this map for you guys is to show you the areas of change. And so when we last took this plan, or I guess I should say when we took our last plan in 2014 to this board, we focused on, or we presented to you the areas of change. So what's changed, from our recommendations from the last time you guys reviewed and endorsed the New Albany strategic plan. So you can see anything that's hatched along here is areas of change. And so some of these areas you can see here in the grid pattern are areas where you guys have already reviewed and approved rezonings. So this land use map reflects and matches the recommendations and the rezoning that you guys approved previously. So that is the Pulte age restricted neighborhood right here. Also Epcon right here. And so the areas of change within the Accord area that differ from our current strategic plan is what we're calling the Northwest area. And so we're still looking at, again, all of these land use areas as far as the specific recommendations go. There's a little bit right here on the northeast corner of Central College and State Route 605. We've also taken a look here at the Trust Corps area. This is where hotels, Dairy Queen, Turkey Hill are located along 62 here. So looking at, expanding the retail here and changing some of the uses to residential. And then the other one, last but not least, is Winding Hollows. I'm sure some of you remember seeing a couple of rezonings for this. This is where we're looking at placing the mixed-use commercial land use district down here. Again, we're still working on the specific standards and recommendations, but our thought is that, this is something, very special. I think, we voiced and shared that with you, both us and the applicant at the time of rezonings, how, it's a very unique site given the environmental features there. So we as staff and our steering committee have, taken a look at, how we can, get a mixed use product there, but still meet the standards. So I think the standards and the recommendation, probably the form will be the most important. So we're still working on the specifics. I know if you looked, we have some additional slides out there that go into more details of these focus areas. But I am not sharing those with you tonight because I do think those will change. We're looking at options and working with our board and commissions on what those what the right mix of residential, commercial, and retail will be. So we'll definitely share those final recommendations with you when we bring this plan back to you formally in the future. Any questions on land use before I move forward to our transportation section from anybody? No? Okay. So the other thing we've looked at is what we're calling mobility. So this is looking at the thoroughfare plan for the city of New Albany, and really thinking about it more broadly this time around to think about all types of mobility. And the Accord does have a thoroughfare plan in it. It does. I'd say it's very fundamental, but it does look at several things, including having a hierarchy of streets, looking at connectivity, and looking at the streetscape as well. And those have been our guiding and building principles for all of our strategic plans since those, because all of those things they're in the Accord document and are still very important today. And we think some of the hallmarks of good planning, within the Accord area to make sure we get the hierarchy, the connectivity, and the appropriate streetscape for the area. So when we started this planning process last spring, we had our city engineer, EP Ferris, and associates go out and do some traffic counts throughout the community. And so that's what you see here is the average daily traffic. So no surprise, 161 has a lot of traffic, being the highway that bisects the city. And then, the major corridors, New Albany Condit Road, 605, Johnstown Road, US 62, are really, the main corridors through New Albany that people use to get either through or to 161. So we took this information and we gave it to Morpsey, who did a future traffic model for us. And so on this slide is really the highlights of that. I didn't want to go into too much detail in that analysis, but here's sort of our big takeaways that I wanted to share with you guys tonight. So we think this is very interesting. First time we've been able to sort of think about this and see this in a number form. So 40% of all trips are within New Albany utilize 161. So 40% of all cars are trying to get to 161. And then 4 out of 10 cars, about 43%, are through traffic. So we hear, we've heard from residents and business about the amount of traffic, but a lot of it actually is not New Albany traffic. It's traffic from outside of our community that it's just trying to get through to other final destinations and locations. So 34% of all trips originate or start in New Albany, and 33% of all trips end in New Albany. Now, these numbers don't add up because of some crazy engineering calculation that I couldn't explain to you and I don't understand. But I get asked that a lot, like, why don't they add up to 100? And I guess that's just the way the engineering works. But it's interesting to see sort of this really this breakdown of where traffic's coming from and where it wants to go to, and it helped us a lot when looking at vehicular traffic within New Albany. And so that led us to identify these future problem areas based on current conditions, the future modeling, and knowing where people are wanting to go to or trying to get through New Albany. And so again, 43% of all traffic is through. And then I mentioned this too, but 65 and 62 are really the main feeders for 161, and they all lead into the village center. So it's really a blessing and a curse. All roads lead to the village center, which is great. That's where we want to have the most vibrancy and activity in New Albany. But at the same time, it's also funneling the most traffic through the same streets where we want to encourage pedestrian walkability and alternative modes of transportation besides vehicles. And so where we see a lot of the backups for vehicles is in the village center, but then also the areas that feed 161 shown by the arrows here. And so we've taken a look at how can we resolve these traffic issues. We're certainly doing things now. In case you guys don't know, we've been syncing lights in the village center to help traffic flow better. We have plans for improvements to the 62 and 161 interchange. But we wanted to look further down the road at how to disperse traffic better throughout New Albany. And again, so we asked people what are their mobility needs and desires for New Albany. So again, besides vehicular traffic, how else do people get around in New Albany? And so we asked people about, how often do they walk or bike to certain areas? And so you can see that, it's fairly, I guess, a broad range of responses there. But I think it's a good amount. Over a quarter of people who are surveyed said they use or they walk or bike, a few times a week, which is great. And then another thing I mentioned too, this is in the Accord and in our strategic plan, just the street character. So streetscape, it's things like street trees, tree lawn, landscaping, of course, horse fence as well. And we heard, overwhelmingly that that's an important feature that people identify with in New Albany at 86% response rates. And so we also asked people, what strategies do you think that we should prioritize as a city for mobility? And so we heard that, leisure trails, expanding our leisure trail system is very important to the community. Again, the corridor characters is a very important thing. And then lastly was alternative modes of transportation. So we took all that into consideration, and what our current thinking as far as transportation and thoroughfare planning goes for New Albany is the creation of something called what we're calling mobility zones. And so we looked at the area where we see increased average daily traffic, or ADT. And so we're thinking, outside of the box of just vehicles, and, mobility zones in these areas, they're really dependent on, you can do capacity improvements and intersection improvements, but it's also dependent on, getting people out of vehicles as well. And so we've highlighted several areas where we think it's important to provide, these alternative modes and multiple modes of transportation. And so that's within the Beauty Park in Licking County, again, within the 62 Walton Parkway area. Again, this is where Turkey Hill Dairy Queen is, and the hotels. And then the Village Center, of course, very important to hopefully have people, park once and then walk, or, even walk or ride their bike to the Village Center from their residence. And so what is a mobility zone? So we've identified them. We think they're solutions to our vehicular traffic components. So it's, it's providing those alternative modes. So we're looking at providing alternate modes of transportation via public transportation. One of the things that we've started since the 2014 strategic plan is the New Albany shuttle system from our parking, or to our business park from the Coda Park and Ride within New Albany, which has seen a huge success. I think I heard that we had 17,000 riders, I think, last year. So certainly building upon the success of that. And then also bike facilities. I think the big outcome from our 2014 plan was just realizing the desire and need for additional bike facilities. So certainly continuing to encourage our bicycle master plan, which envisions a Velo Loop, which is a 5-mile loop around New Albany to provide biking connectivity in and throughout the community, and then also providing amenities for bikers as well at these, especially at these mobility zones, but at other key areas. And then also, taking a look at, site design is an important aspect in many areas, but also certainly, to provide meaningful pedestrian and vehicular, and, whether it be, taking an Uber or public transportation, making sure that it's friendly and easy for people to use, whether they walk, bike, or take a car. So that's something that we're taking a look at. And then again, I guess I've hit this a couple of times, but multiple street connections. So being able to disperse traffic to alternate roads, if there should be additional, demand on certain road segments. And then also taking a look at, a mix of uses. So I mentioned that we're looking at this mixed use district, and we're also looking at finding the right balance of residential, commercial, and these retail uses in the Northwest corridor as well. And, last but not least is increased density. I think this is especially true in the Village Center. Keeping in mind, we heard from the community that small town feel and sense of community is important. So balancing all these things to find success for, mobility along with land use in New Albany. So that's the presentation we'll have for tonight. I just wanted to give you guys an introduction, some background. We're still working on this, and we'll have much more for you in the future. But hopefully this provides you some context and gets you thinking when we come back to you. But with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have for me, and appreciate any feedback.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Really appreciate it. Looks like been doing some really great work on the strategic plan, and very well designed and easy to understand. And yeah, so looking forward to seeing the final when you guys are done.
Absolutely.
Any comments from the panel? Questions from the panel?
I've got one.
Go ahead. All right, go ahead.
My question is, what are they planning on doing for the areas that are not new builds as far as putting in the bike paths or walkways or whatever you want to call them throughout the city? What brought the question to mind was here recently, they've just finished the sidewalk section where they put in the new dog facility that we voted on a couple years back or whatever. And they had one little strip of property that was just basically a driveway entrance. And it comes up and you have one section there of sidewalk that's like maybe 35 feet wide or 35 feet long. And then you have another house, and then you have their main property, which has the sidewalk all the way through. And then you go to the next house that doesn't have a sidewalk. So what provisions, if anything, are they thinking about for the homes or businesses that have been there in the past that aren't new builds to connect everything?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And we've actually spent a fair amount of time trying to figure out how we can tackle that very issue. Certainly in New Albany, the majority of our leisure trail and sidewalk occurs with development, so it's a requirement that that be put in. But as you mentioned, we also do have these, yeah, I guess you could call them historic homes that were and even street corridors that, were once just in the township, but were annexed into New Albany. So, Kitzmiller Road, Harlem Road, sections of even 605, there's long-standing existing homes that where it is a challenge in order to fit all of the streetscape items, things like street trees, tree lawn, an 8-foot leisure path within, a small section of roadway. Sometimes there's just not enough right of way. So one of the things we've done is we've actually worked on creating a new type of character classification. So we've actually unhooked the functional classifications and the character classifications for our streets, and so they're no longer one and the same. And so that's allowed us to take a look at what are the all of the characters, different characters of our roadways in New Albany, and we've actually identified these I guess, long-standing, historic corridors, where there are challenges, real challenges to put in these leisure trails. And so we're providing some flexibility in the plan to, try to, while it may not be perfect as far as, the design goes, we still think it's important, and we've heard from the community it's important to put in those amenities. But we think, we're trying to design around those constraints as well. So that's how we hope to, provide guidance, for the city moving forward is, even if it's not quite the full 8-foot trail that, we can, even if it's a 5 or 6 foot trail and a smaller tree lawn, making those connections, is important to the community to provide those connections between and make sure there's not gaps in our sidewalks and leisure trail system.
I had a sort of a question, maybe a comment. I'm not sure. I don't ever like anything to be self-serving, but I definitely like riding my bike. And one observation, both as a cyclist and as a driver, is that there seems like there could be an opportunity in some locations to have a wider berm. The leisure trails, the worst thing as a cyclist on a leisure trail, someone walking a dog with a long leash, you're worried you're going to get tied up in that. And I know there's a few areas where I ride where, especially along Johnstown Road or 62 south of 161, that berm is like just the paint that's on the side of the road at times. And I know that there's a lot of people who park their cars over around Starbucks and then get on their bikes and they go to points north. And a lot of those roads are very, very tight. If you're trying to not even as a cyclist, but as a motorist, it's kind of hard to get around, people that are, on the side. So just a thought, and it looks like you're thinking about that, but I just wanted to add that as a person who's out there.
Yeah, no, that's a great comment, and I appreciate that feedback. Yeah, we have what we what's titled the Bike New Albany. So that's our bike master plan. And so it provides, similar to streets, a hierarchy of bike improvements as well. And so it identifies certain streets where, maybe it's just something simple as, signage to make people aware of bicyclists. In other areas, we identify share rows. But in certain areas too, it recommends bike lanes, on street or off street bike lanes. So it's, and you can see we've started to implement that plan along Beach Road and sections of 605. Yeah, there's certainly certain corridors like 62 where, it's finding that right balance, to keep the characteristic of our streets, in that rural form. But I remember at the time we had interviewed cyclists around the community to find, yeah, like you mentioned, I remember hearing for the first time that, the number of people that do seem to ride north and launch from Starbucks there. So that's certainly all things that we're continuing to encourage to make sure that that's, whether you're, or I guess better way to say it is no matter what your level of comfort is for biking, that, you either have a leisure path or, some type of on-street amenity, again, whether it be signage or, an actual bike lane to make it easy, and I guess as friendly as possible for all ranges of skill for cyclists.
And Steve, you could also mention to Ralph about the Velo Loop too, if you like. That's a
Yeah, thank you. I gotta say, how could I miss that? But no, thank you very much. Yeah, Mr. Brubaker. Yeah, and actually, if you guys haven't been, I'll put this plug in. Please visit Rose Run Park. That's actually the first segment of the Velo Loop, and it's a little bit different and characteristic due just to the amount of pedestrians there. It's actually meant to purposely slow you down a little bit, but yeah, the Velo Loop is a dedicated 5 mile long bicycle loop that goes through the community. So it provide started, I guess, right now it's starting at Rose Run, but eventually it would head east. It would cross 161, connect up into our business park and the residents north of 161, and then loop back down to provide that full circular path. So that's certainly something that we still evaluate and look at as part of development and rezonings in New Albany. And yeah, hopefully we'll continue. I'm sure we will the Velo Loop, where with the success of Rose Run Park there, we're starting to do planning for Rose Run 2 and looking to envision how we can expand, practically the Velo Loop.
Yeah, I heard that and I was excited. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments from the panel? All right, wonderful. All right, well, thanks again, Steve. It was great to see what's going on and the beard in more detail. So, anything else for the meeting tonight, or do we?
I'll make a quick comment.
Sure.
Yeah. Also, Steve, if you're having trouble, there should be a stop sharing, like a red and green tab in the top of your screen.
Oh, here we go. Thanks.
Yeah, there you go.
You could read the look on my face.
Yeah. No, thank you. I just wanted to say real quick, obviously this was the first meeting that Stephanie staffed for the Accord panel. I'm not sure if this was the first one that you've staffed, period, or not. But is it? Okay. Well, congratulations. So glad that it was successful. But I just wanted to say that Stephanie is going to be taking over more of the full day-to-day staffing for City of Columbus for the panel. So for future emails, updates, communications about meetings, applications, look for her name and not mine. And for my part, I just wanted to say thank you. It's been a pleasure working with all of you the past year and a half. Panel members have been great. Working with Steve and Chris and New Albany staff have been great. And but if today's any indication, I'm leaving in good hands. So yeah, thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Mark. We'll be sad to not see you every month, but looks like Stephanie's more than capable. So thank you, Stephanie, for your inaugural meeting tonight. It was great.
Thank you.
Perfect. All right. Well, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Ralph Smithers, so moved.
Yep. Second?
Mo moved to second.
Excellent. All right. Looks like we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.